Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Spain. On April 7th, 2021, 29-year-old Helen Arias left her home in the city of Oviedo and vanished without a trace. She was heading to a small rural area in the Leon province, where her former partner's family lived. The trip didn't raise any red flags. Helen had taken this route before. She hadn't mentioned any issues, and she planned to return the same day. But by evening, she stopped responding to messages. Not long after, her phone went silent as well. Her car was later found with her personal belongings still inside, but there was no sign of Helen. What began as a missing person case quickly escalated into a high-profile investigation. Conflicting accounts, silence from key witnesses, and a series of details that just didn't add up only deepened the mystery. With every new clue, the story took a darker turn. But at the time, no one could have imagined where it would eventually lead. Helen Arias was born in 1992 in Oviedo, a city in the autonomous community of Asturias in northern Spain. She came from a middle-class background. Her parents led a quiet, steady life, working regular jobs and striving to give their daughter a stable and supportive environment. Helen was their only child, and her upbringing focused heavily on fostering responsibility and independence. The family home was calm, and serious arguments were rare. Even as a young girl, Helen stood out for her organization and strong self-discipline. She didn't need constant supervision, and consistently kept her promises to both her parents and her teachers. During her years in elementary and high school, she was a solid student. Outside of school, she preferred quiet time with her family, or engaging in solo hobbies rather than large social circles. By the time she reached high school, she was already certain about her future. She wanted to help others. After graduating, Helen enrolled at the University of Oviedo, choosing a field focused on social work and psychology. Her main goal was to gain practical tools to support people facing life's toughest moments. During college, she kept a low profile. She wasn't involved in campus politics or social activism, focusing entirely on subjects that aligned with her personal beliefs and interests. Those who knew Helen described her as serious, reserved, yet kind-hearted. She wasn't drawn to risky situations and preferred a slow, steady pace of life. Her decisions were always well thought out, and she avoided impulsive behavior. While she didn't show emotions outwardly, she spoke with sincerity. She had a small, close-knit circle of trusted friends and was known as someone others could rely on. Throughout both school and college, she stayed away from sketchy groups or disruptive behavior. José Ángel Bobadilla was a few years older than Helen. By the time they met, he had already finished school and was working. Their paths first crossed in 2018 in Oviedo during a casual hangout with mutual acquaintances. After that, they kept in touch, and their relationship slowly began to grow. It was steady, without any obvious signs of conflict. At first, José came across as thoughtful and respectful. He showed a genuine interest in Helen's life, respected her personal space, was punctual and polite. All of this matched what Helen considered appropriate behavior in a relationship, so she had no reason to doubt him. A few months into their relationship, José introduced Helen to his family. He lived in Prado de la Guspeña, a small rural town in the Leon province. Helen met the Bobadilla family in 2019. She was introduced to his mother, father, and younger sister, Andrea. On the surface, everything seemed calm. His parents didn't show any resistance to Helen. Their conversation was formal but respectful. José's sister, Andrea, being younger, seemed curious and friendly toward her brother's girlfriend. Helen didn't notice anything alarming during that first visit. His family appeared courteous, even if a bit reserved. As time passed, their relationship continued to develop. Helen started spending more time with José's family, and regular trips from Oviedo to Prado de la Guspeña became a normal part of her routine. José was supportive and helped her with everyday issues. He didn't place unrealistic expectations on her and spoke about their future together, often sharing his long-term goals. However, when it came to his job situation, things weren't as steady. His income was inconsistent, and he had an outstanding debt of over 13,000 euros. Helen was aware of it, but she didn't view it as a red flag. She saw it as his personal issue and didn't feel obligated to get involved. Helen also maintained a friendly rapport with Andrea. Jose's sister was warm, talkative, and often shared her thoughts with Helen openly. Gradually, Helen became more involved in the Bobadilla family's life, blending into their everyday routine. By 2020, though, things between Helen and Jose began to shift. Beneath the surface of calm, cracks were starting to show. Their conversations turned tense more frequently. Jose's behavior became inconsistent, and he began making vague references to personal struggles he didn't fully explain. The underlying issue appeared to be that same debt, now over 13,000 euros, which still hadn't been resolved. Although Helen had known about it, Jose avoided discussing repayment plans, never clarified how he intended to manage it, and wouldn't say whether he was facing pressure from anyone else. He didn't offer any concrete solutions, nor did he seek help. Instead, Jose grew more withdrawn. He would sometimes disappear for long periods, ignoring messages and offering no explanation for his silence. His mood became increasingly irritable and distant. What had once seemed like a dependable relationship was beginning to show clear signs of emotional detachment. Around this time, Andrea's presence in their lives became increasingly noticeable. Jose's sister was often nearby, joining conversations, being present at get-togethers. While she never expressed open hostility, her behavior began to carry a quiet unease. Her conversations with Helen turned more formal, losing the warmth they once had. Andrea never criticized her brother directly or commented on his actions, but her silence only emphasized the growing tension within the family. By early 2021, the issue of Jose's outstanding debt began to take on a more pressing tone. He started mentioning that creditors were demanding repayment, and fast. He never revealed exactly who was behind the pressure, but made it clear that things were serious. Helen didn't push for answers, but it was obvious that the stress on him was building. He began complaining about not having enough time, canceling meetups with vague excuses. His texts became shorter, and he avoided any conversation about their future together. The tension escalated when Jose brought up selling the car they had previously used together in order to pay down part of the debt. Technically, the car was his. It had been purchased with help from his family. Helen didn't object, but the suggestion itself signaled that things were deteriorating fast. Jose was now looking for quick fixes, yet he kept his family out of these financial discussions, which made Helen question how seriously he was trying to address the issue or whether he had any real plan at all. Around this period, communication between Helen and Jose's parents came to a halt. Where once she would occasionally speak with them during visits, that now stopped entirely. Andrea remained her only point of contact with the family, but even that role had become minimal. Helen found herself more and more in the dark about what was going on. The debt situation became more urgent, but the flow of information only shrank. Jose had grown distant, avoided discussions, and refused help. There were no direct arguments between them, but his increasing passivity became the clearest sign that the relationship was unraveling. By spring 2021, things had turned strictly formal. Their meetings became rare, and communication was reduced to sporadic texts. Joint plans disappeared. Jose no longer talked about the future or showed any interest in long-term prospects. Though he never officially ended the relationship, he had clearly pulled away. Helen didn't attempt to restore what they once had. She understood that if the relationship was going to continue, the next step had to come from him, but it never did. That financial conflict marked the beginning of a larger breakdown. Jose's behavior reflected an inner struggle he couldn't seem to manage. On April 7, 2021, Helen Arias left her home in Oviedo around 9 a.m. She was headed to Prado de la Guspeña, the small town in León province where Jose Bobadilla lived. Although her visits had become less frequent, Helen still went to see Jose and his family from time to time. The route was familiar, and she planned to return home that same day. She told her mother she was taking a trip to Prado de la Guspeña and reassured her that everything was fine. Her voice didn't carry any signs of distress. Helen's phone remained active until around noon. The last recorded activity occurred at about 1 p.m. After that, she went silent. Helen stopped answering messages, didn't return calls, and didn't appear online. Repeated attempts to reach her went unanswered. At first, Helen's family didn't suspect anything was wrong. Her mother figured she might have simply been delayed. But as the evening went on, closer to 8 p.m., worry started to grow. Helen still hadn't made contact, and her phone was off. She hadn't come home, even though she had always kept her family informed about any changes to her plans. Messages went unanswered, and there was no activity on her messaging apps. By 10 p.m., concern turned into panic. The family tried reaching out to Jose, but he claimed he hadn't seen Helen that day and hadn't received any messages from her. His response didn't sit right. Considering that she had told her mother she was heading to see him, his statement didn't align with what they expected. What stood out even more was his lack of urgency. He didn't offer to help, didn't drive to Oviedo, and didn't make any move to get involved. His behavior seemed unusually passive. The next morning, Helen's family went to the police and officially reported her missing. The authorities began checking her last known movements and contacts. One of the first steps was to trace her phone. The data confirmed that Helen had indeed reached Prado de la Guspeña. Her phone's last location showed her in the area around midday. After that, the signal was lost. Officers began canvassing the area, speaking with residents. One witness claimed to have seen someone matching Helen's description near the edge of town earlier that day, but no clear identification was possible. There were few security cameras in the area, and none had recorded any trace of Helen. There was no evidence that she had been at the Bobadilla house. Jose insisted she never arrived. Andrea gave a similar account. The idea that Helen hadn't made it to her destination didn't match the phone's geolocation data. That only deepened the suspicion. Investigators began looking into the relationship between Helen and Jose, as well as his family background. At the same time, Helen's relatives turned to social media to ask for help. They posted her photo and description, and the first public message about her disappearance began circulating. During the first 24 hours, police found no signs of a forced disappearance. The car Helen had driven was located near a train station in a nearby town. It was locked, had no visible damage, and all her belongings, including her bag and ID, were inside. The phone was missing, but the interior of the car was undisturbed, with no signs of struggle or disorder. That detail raised further concerns. If Helen had left the vehicle voluntarily, she wouldn't have left behind everything she had with her. The theory that she had run away or chosen to disappear on her own didn't match either the facts or her personality. She had no history of mental health challenges, impulsive behavior, or self-destructive tendencies. The next step was to officially broaden the search. Police reached out to locals, inspected nearby buildings and wooded areas, and began organizing a coordinated effort. Search dogs and drones were deployed. Volunteers from the community joined in. The family's appeal for help was picked up by local news outlets, and the case started to gain wider public attention. Despite growing efforts, the first 48 hours after Helen's disappearance yielded no concrete leads about her exact whereabouts. Her phone remained out of service. Jose and his relatives maintained that they hadn't seen Helen that day. Neither he nor Andrea volunteered to assist in the search or expressed concern publicly. By the end of the second day, the case was officially treated as a potential criminal act. Investigators opened a formal case under statutes related to possible forced disappearance. They decided to focus search efforts within a 3-mile radius of Helen's last known phone signal. The status of the case changed. It was transferred to a specialized investigative unit. From that moment, the theory of an accidental event was no longer on the table. On April 11th, 2021, 4 days after Helen Arias was last seen, her body was discovered by a group of civilian volunteers who had joined the search. They were combing through an area near the edge of town when one of them noticed broken branches and unusual markings that led toward a ravine. At the bottom, hidden beneath dense vegetation and a layer of debris, was the body. Police immediately sealed off the scene. During initial examination, they found Helen lying on her back. Her wrists had been restrained with plastic zip ties. Marks around her neck suggested strangulation, and a visible head injury pointed to blunt force trauma. Her face showed signs of damage. Although no signs of a struggle were found at the site, The surrounding soil showed drag marks, indicating the body had likely been moved there post-mortem. Nearby, investigators found cut zip ties, pieces of cloth, and a torn bag. Tire tracks in the area suggested that a vehicle had been used. There were no indications of intimate assault based on the condition of her clothes and body. However, strands of hair that did not belong to Helen were found close by and sent for DNA analysis. All evidence was documented and collected from the scene. Authorities recorded the depth of the ravine, possible entry paths, and a rough timeline estimating when the body had been placed there. The forensic report confirmed the cause of death was asphyxiation. While the blow to the head was serious, it wasn't fatal, though it likely caused unconsciousness. The time of death aligned with the period when Helen's phone had stopped transmitting signals. Medical experts concluded that she passed away within 1 to 2 hours of her last recorded phone activity. Her body showed no signs of prolonged exposure to the elements, indicating that it had been brought to the site after death and hastily concealed with whatever materials were at hand. That same day, law enforcement launched a rapid response to identify and detain those involved. The first to be taken into custody were Andrea Bobadilla and her former partner Raul. During questioning, Andrea revealed key information. She admitted to helping cover up the body and identified Jose as the one who initiated the act. According to her account, the confrontation between Jose and Helen happened inside the family home, where the crime took place. Jose Bobadilla was taken into custody just a few hours later. He didn't resist arrest. During his first interrogation, he denied any involvement and insisted that Helen never came to see him that day. However, this claim was later contradicted by Andrea's testimony and data from Helen's phone geolocation records. Evidence collected from the site where Helen's body was found matched items located at the Bobadilla residence. Blood traces were discovered on the floor of a utility room. Forensic tests confirmed the blood belonged to Helen. Packaging from zip ties and scraps of fabric were identical to the materials found at the ravine. As the investigation progressed, authorities were able to reconstruct the sequence of events. Helen had arrived in town and was met by Jose. At some point, a confrontation occurred. Jose struck her, which caused Helen to lose consciousness. He then proceeded to take her life by asphyxiation. Andrea and Raul assisted in disposing of the body, transporting it under cover of night to a remote ravine. All of this happened without witnesses. Within 48 hours of the arrest, investigators had gathered enough evidence to file formal charges. All 3 individuals were placed in custody. The case was officially classified as a criminal offense involving premeditated action and concealment. During his questioning, Raul refused to testify. He did not confirm Andrea's account, nor did he offer an alternative version of events. His attorney stated that Raul was present, but unaware of the real purpose of the trip. However, investigators concluded that Raul knowingly participated, pointing to his behavior afterward. He didn't report what had happened and actively helped cover it up. At his third interrogation, Jose partially admitted to what had occurred, claiming he acted in a state of emotional overwhelm. But investigators determined that his actions were intentional and deliberate. He made no attempt to call for help, never reported the incident, and took active steps to conceal what had happened. Andrea and Raul were identified as accomplices. According to case documents, both had the chance to step away, but instead chose to help destroy evidence. The body of evidence included physical findings, Andrea's statement, DNA analysis, mobile phone records, and forensic evaluations of items from both the house and the burial site. The investigation concluded with charges including unlawful killing, complicity, concealment of a body, and providing false statements. All 3 remained in custody awaiting trial. The trial surrounding Helen Arias' death began in early 2022. The main defendants were Jose Bobadilla, his sister Andrea, and Andrea's former partner Raul. Prosecutors classified the act as a deliberate crime involving multiple participants, followed by efforts to hide the body and destroy evidence. During court proceedings, Jose partially acknowledged his role, admitting to the argument and the physical altercation, but denying intent. His defense argued that he had been emotionally unstable, provoked, and had not meant for things to escalate. The court ultimately did not accept that version. Witness testimonies, evidence from the scene, and Jose's actions following the incident were interpreted by the court as deliberate. Andrea confirmed her earlier statements during the trial. She detailed each participant's role, maintaining her previous account. Jose was the main perpetrator, while she and Raul assisted in concealing what had happened. Her defense asked the court to consider the pressure she faced from her brother and the fact that she didn't take part in any aggressive actions. Raul remained silent throughout the proceedings. His attorney argued that he had no intent and wasn't fully aware of what he was being drawn into. At the conclusion of the trial, the court found all three guilty. Jose Bobadilla was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Andrea received 8 years for assisting and covering up the crime. Raul was given 6 years for aiding and abetting. The prosecution deemed the sentences fair. Helen's family was present at the hearings. Her mother took the role of a private complainant. Her stance was firm. She pushed for the maximum possible penalties. After the verdict was read, she expressed disappointment, stating that the sentences given to Andrea and Raul were too lenient. Jose's family declined to comment. Several months after sentencing, Jose Bobadilla's defense filed an appeal. Their main argument was that key evidence used in the initial trial should have been ruled inadmissible. His lawyers claimed that Andrea's confession had been made under pressure and that the items found in the family home didn't conclusively link Jose to the act. They also questioned whether the forensic evaluation met the required legal standards. The appellate court agreed to review the case. In the second trial, prosecutors maintained their position, pointing to Jose's coordinated actions, the concealment of Helen's body, false statements, and his failure to call for help. However, the defense introduced new arguments. They claimed the blow Helen received wasn't fatal, and that medical reports did not conclusively prove asphyxiation. They emphasized the absence of a clear motive and the influence of public pressure during the initial trial. During this second round, Andrea walked back parts of her original confession, saying she had spoken under emotional distress. Raul also didn't confirm what he had said earlier. This weakened the prosecution's case. The court ruled some of the earlier evidence inadmissible. Given the retracted testimony and lack of direct proof of physical harm by Jose, the court concluded there wasn't enough to support a guilty verdict. In 2023, Jose was acquitted due to insufficient evidence and released from custody. The ruling caused a strong public reaction. Helen's family called the decision unjust. Her mother accused the court of undermining trust in the justice system. Prosecutors appealed the acquittal, but the higher court declined to reopen the case. Following Jose Bobadilla's acquittal, public debate intensified. For weeks, social media was filled with commentary, much of it criticizing the legal system. Opinions were split. Some believed the acquittal was a miscarriage of justice, while others pointed to the lack of solid evidence. Public confidence in law enforcement and the courts came under sharp scrutiny. Andrea and Raul's situation received less attention. They continued serving their sentences. The Bobadilla family did not make any public statements after the conclusion of legal proceedings. In Helen Arias' case, some key questions, especially about Jose's motive, remained unanswered. In both trials, he never clearly explained why things happened the way they did. Investigators believe the conflict escalated due to unresolved financial issues, emotional stress, and a breakdown in the relationship. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.